Welcome to the Sharpway Show. A little bit past 7 p.m. on the East Coast. Thank you so much for giving me a small chunk of your evening. Today, I have an amazing show. I have someone who I've been chasing down for a bit to get on, and I'm so pleased to have this gentleman on. He is someone who I have a lot of respect for, someone who has made a huge, I would say, career change. Maybe that's a good way of putting it. A huge career change. Been very successful, and while doing it, has stayed true to himself, which most people who get into this field, they have a lot of trouble doing. I know my congressperson is AOC, so I know that from personal experience. I'm very happy to bring in the man himself, the mayor of Knox County, Mayor Glenn Jacobs. How are you, sir?
I am great, Larry. Thanks for having me on. And like you said, we've been trying to get together for quite some time, so appreciate you making it happen.
And thank you for giving me the side of a road. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm actually on my way to the world's largest fish fry in Paris, Tennessee, and sort of miscalculated my time here, so I just had to pull over. But thankfully, modern technology can let you do pretty cool things.
Well, you've just hit the point that I love so much. And by the way, if anybody wants to see what the mayor is doing, you can head over to his website at jacobs4mayor.com. And if you're listening to the podcast, 4 is F-O-R, not the number, the word F-O-R, jacobs4mayor.com, or follow him on Twitter at Glenn Jacobs TN. So the thing I love about what you do is you've taken your job as mayor very differently than most mayors. You've taken this job almost as a chief marketing officer, chief cheerleader, because you are always talking about the local guy or gal, the pizza shop, the fish fry, the local, you give out awards, and this is constant. And I think so many people don't understand how it makes people feel pride in their community.
Yeah. I say that we live in the best place to work, play, live, and raise a family. And I say that because it's true. But nevertheless, we have to promote that. And I moved to East Tennessee in 1995. When I moved here, it was a hidden gem. No one really knew about Knoxville. Like, where's Knoxville, right? All they knew that it was the home of the University of Tennessee. Of course, that's changed a lot now, and people realize it's a very desirable place to live. But nevertheless, I think that part of my job is promoting the area. And when you look at business, I mean, small business is the backbone of any community, and certainly it's true here. So anything that I can do to highlight small businesses, interesting fact, okay? And people in Knoxville may not even know this. The touchscreen was invented in Knoxville. It's ubiquitous around the world now, but it was invented in Knoxville. There's all these little gems that if I hadn't become mayor, I never would have known. But I think that every community has things like that, right? And in many cases, and of course I have some advantages because of who I am and my former career, but nevertheless, the more that you can talk about those and the more that you can promote your community, the better. And as mayor, who else is in that kind of position? It's the perfect opportunity for that.
Absolutely. But look, I'm just going to be very clear. You go out of your way. I had a decent mayor back in the day. 2 in a row actually were decent in New York City. New York City, obviously a very different animal than Knox County. But I had Giuliani and Bloomberg. And those 2 mayors, what they did well, now they were very different type of mayors, but what they both did well is they did a weekly radio show. And I remember that, and I felt more connected. And it was things like they'd call up and say, "Hey, Giuliani, the stop sign's down on 4th Street. Okay, I'll send my guys over." I mean, that kind of thing actually happened, right?
Right.
But since Bloomberg copied it for a bit, then kind of weaned off. And de Blasio was a terrible mayor, and he just did nothing right, not even that. So he didn't do it at all. But you do even more of that. You not only do you do updates with the people of your area, but you also interview other people. You interview other representatives. That's another level, because usually when the mayor goes on TV or on the radio, it's all about the mayor, right? See, I'm the mayor, I'm the cool guy. It's all about me. But you're actually interviewing and you're putting a spotlight on others. Why would you do that? It seems against what you should do?
Well, in that particular case, as far as we've interviewed other folks from other levels of government, the state and federal level, and that's really aimed at high school kids, because unfortunately, civics is not something that is necessarily. It's still kind of there, but not. I don't think it's taught as much as when you and I were in school. So it's really to give those kids a foundation for how government works. And a lot of times, I always say, people look at the federal government, and that's what's on Fox News, that's what's on CNN, and they think that's government. And we're trying to show, and this is really one of my passions, is how much state and local government impact people. And in many cases, it's a much more substantive impact than what the feds do. And then we also do things like just, again, trying to show off what all is in our area, whether it's education, nonprofits, private sector. And the great thing about that also is it shows that all of us can work together. And to me, there's so many problems that, you and I share a very similar philosophy that government can't solve everything. In fact, what generally happens is government causes a problem or makes a problem bigger. And then it's more government, which causes even bigger problems. And what we need to be doing, I think that's actually one of the most important things that America can do is that convening ability, that ability to get people at the table. And it's not always about like a one size fits all government policy. Often it's working within the community, and those are the people that have the solutions.
Well, it's funny because you talk about, people always ask you things like, well, the economy is getting bad, or China, or inflation. Sure. And, you're local, so obviously you can't control inflation, right? Obviously. But you speak about local issues like, hey, what if we have better education? What if we make, growing a business easier? What if we get people more jobs? And you basically use it as, this is how we buffer against inflation. And to be forward, I've never heard another mayor say it like that. Other mayors just go, well, we'll ask the federal government for money, and that's the answer. But you're like, no. If they want to give us money, we'll take it, obviously. But also we can do stuff. And
sure.
What made you talk like that versus just copy the rest of the mayors and just beg for money?
Because at my heart, I'm a conservative with very, very strong libertarian leanings. And again, I just don't think the government has the answers, especially the federal government. I'm very suspicious in many cases of what the feds do. Now, of course, with the Democrat in the White House, and we're a very Republican area, it ain't like we can turn to them to help us out with stuff. And then you look at something like inflation. I mean, that's caused by the federal government. That's caused by the Federal Reserve. And it was funny when they had one of the COVID bailouts, and I said, look, they shouldn't do this. Now, if they do it, I'm going to fight to make sure that we get money just like everybody else, but they shouldn't do it. And of course, the press sort of excoriated me over that. But nevertheless, that's the truth. And I think, when we look at state and local, to me, and I say all politics is local, right? Well, so much of that is if you can build up your community, you can kind of break those bonds, maybe at least a little bit, or at least build some resiliency in your own system so that you're not always begging the federal government to come in and bail you out or give you money for whatever this or that. I mean, it's great when they do because, we don't have to pay it directly, although our people pay it indirectly. But nevertheless, it's just, especially nowadays, and, the federal government is just exerting so much more control over everything. I'm a big 10th Amendment person. So the more that we can kind of keep them at arm's length, for me, the better.
Well, this goes right in line with what you've said before. You've said, even when people thought you were nuts, what you guys talking about, you've still said conservative principles work. And you've pushed that even when people talked about, Second Amendment. You have supported the Second Amendment, Fifth Amendment, 10th Amendment, even after tragedies. I mean, what I thought was interesting is when you were asked about this, you said something that, again, no one talks about here, that the Second Amendment isn't about guns. You said it's about arms. So we have to worry not just about guns, but all types of things. The issue isn't the weapon. The issue is the person and what they want to do with the weapon. That there's so many other things. That, if I remember right, you mentioned the idea of improvised weapons and things of that sort, that we've got to worry about that. So your answer wasn't more gun laws. Your answer was more community.
Right. And also, frankly, we have a mental health crisis in this country.
Mm.
I think that's really exacerbated by locking people in their houses in many cases for 2 years during COVID.
Yes.
That was terrible policy. But we always point to guns, but then if you look at what really happens, yes, guns are used for terrible things, but so are cars when they have deliberately used in mass murder. The worst school massacre in American history is actually in 1927 when a deranged man blew up a school using dynamite. And you look at Columbine, and the two shooters at Columbine, well, they'd also planted propane bombs around the school. Fortunately, those didn't go off, which that would have just made that even that much worse. And we had a similar situation here not too long ago. And I think that often what's happened is people think, well, government has a magic wand and they can just fix a problem and just write a law and it goes away. Well, in this particular situation, it can make it harder for people to get guns. The problem is the good people, the law-abiding people will follow that law. The bad people or the folks who sadly have mental illness, which has caused them to become deranged, they're going to figure out a way to hurt people.
Right.
That's just the fact of the matter. And all we do when we put more laws on the books is we generally end up catching the non-suspecting law-abiding people, and not the people that the laws are focused on catching or stopping.
Absolutely. And I think the other piece here is you brought up the idea of mental illness. Mental illness very often is connected with addiction, right? They're not always the same, but they're often linked and connected, particularly after the lockdowns. Sure. If you had mental illness and you got locked down for 2 years, now you got an addiction problem too. If you were an addict and you were locked up for 2 years, now you got a mental illness problem also. So again, when people ask you, how do you handle fentanyl? How do you handle those things? You didn't just yell more cops. You didn't just yell more government. You said we need more community to step in and help these people. And you wanted to have a partnership, not I got you, forget it. Go back home, the government will handle this. You didn't do that. You were like, we got to make plans together. And I've always said that the more government you add, the more community you remove. That's
right. Yeah, one of the first things I did when I came into office was I got with the mayor of the city of Knoxville. We have a county and a city mayor, and we put together a program called All for Knox, which is essentially a community initiative. Because what you find is everybody's working in their own silos. And again, being the mayor, I can get people to the table. And what ends up happening is you see that there's a bunch of people working on this issue, but no one's doing this, and this one's important too. So how can we get everyone talking and working as a team, everybody rowing in the same direction, as opposed to everybody kind of doing their own thing? And don't get me wrong, people are doing their own thing because they're good folks and they care and they want to help, but they may not necessarily they may not necessarily be getting out of their silos. And that's a huge problem just all the way around. So, then you look at things like I'm a big proponent. I think that we have to be tough on crime, but we also have to be smart on crime. And too often we think, we're just going to lock people up and that's going to solve the problem. Well, there's 50,000 people that are incarcerated across the state of Tennessee. 97% of them will get out at some point. So what happens then? Some people, unfortunately, they're just bad people and they're going to reoffend, and that can't do anything about it. But a lot of those folks, given the opportunity, they're not going to reoffend, and we can drive that recidivism rate down. But again, it's a community effort. There's a great organization in Tennessee that just came to Knox County called Men of Valor. They're a faith-based group, and that's what they do. When an individual completes the 1-year Men of Valor program, that recidivism rate among those people drops to 15%. Okay.
That's
normally
amazing.
It's about 50. Yeah. Normally it's almost 50%. Almost half the people that get out of jail or prison are going to be back in 3 years. So those sort of things, and they're all around us. Again, I didn't even know about this stuff till I became mayor. And I was like, wow, there's all this cool stuff happening, but why don't people know about it? And I think part of my job is just to talk about it and to get other people to the table.
That's how you became the cheerleader, right? That's how you became
exactly.
it. Absolutely.
That's right.
But I mean, talking about crime, right? I think people would have thought, okay, we're going to hire Jacobs here to be our mayor. He's a big, strong, aggressive, violent guy. He's going to be that way. But you have proven to be very gentle and to be very human, more than I think people thought. Was that a shock for people? Did people think, oh, he's going to come in and when, start taking the prisoners and throwing them out of the top rope? Did they think that?
I'm sure some people did. In fact, I think a lot of folks, they just didn't know what to think, right? And, it's a stereotype just like everything else. Thankfully,
Sure.
Because of people like Dwayne Johnson and others who have been very successful in fields outside of professional wrestling, I think it's a little easier for me now than it would have been many years in the past. When I was campaigning, I realized that the wrestling thing, it's a novelty. I'll get a lot of press and a lot of media. At the same time, I didn't want to be a joke. I didn't want to be a laughing stock. So I actually had to know what I was talking about. And I think that the bar is higher for me in that regard than it is for the average person out there, the average politician. I mean, they can, if they're a business person or whatever, people are automatically going to think, oh, they're smart, they know what they're talking about. With me, I really had to know what I was talking about because I'm going to get pounded over our various issues. That's made me, I guess, really do a lot more research, a lot more education than I otherwise would have had to have done.
You just answered my question because I was about to say you talk about serious policy often. Like people ask and you say, nope, that's not how it works. You were actually talking, if I remember right, you were talking about when people were just saying, how are you going to deal with the economy? And you talked about land use. You went right into land use. And again, the average mayor doesn't do that. They say, federal government, give me money. That's what they do. You were like, no, let me tell you how this works and how that's going to link to this and link to that. You basically answered my next question, which was that's why you did it, because you were in a world to where they were going to judge you more than somebody else. So you had to be extra savvy.
Yeah. It's interesting because in some ways the bar is really low because people have a preconceived idea about you, but you have to turn that around and, you have to set the bar very high for yourself and then make everyone else jump over it too. And I guess the great thing for me is I found out that a lot of people, it's not that they can't, they just don't have the inclination to do it.
Yes. Well, I got to tell you, my gut has told me one of the reasons why you've understood how to talk to people so well, and you understand the value of small ceremonies. Like, hey, this is a guy who won an award, and you show up there and shake his hand and give him the award, right? Or this is the greatest, whatever, taco place in Tennessee or something. You can show up and go, hey, you're the great taco place or whatever. I don't know if that's true. I made that up. But whatever. Right? That you understand.
We do have the best hot dog joint in the country, actually. It's been voted number one like 5 years in a row. So there you go.
There we go. So hot dogs, not tacos, hot dogs. Great.
Yes.
So you do that and you recognize that people really love that and they remember that. I mean, I know I could see the smile on their face. They're like, I remember this guy. This guy showed up and gave me the hot dog trophy or whatever, right? He didn't have to. He's the mayor. He could have been doing something else, but he chose to show up and give me the hot dog award. And I think that really has, my gut tells me you got that from your time basically being a showman in entertainment in the past.
Well, I think it's also important that you recognize people. I was thinking the other day about management styles. And if I could sum it up, it's you don't flatter people because, of course, that's false, but you praise extensively and you criticize minimally and target it. And I think it's the same just when you're dealing with people just out there. I mean, there's so many good things going on. And, if I can highlight something and help that individual, but as well as help all of us, right? Because if we have the number one hot dog restaurant in the country, that's a big deal. Again, a lot of folks may not know that. And it may not seem like it is, but it really is. And it's something to brag about. But yeah, Larry, that's exactly right. I mean, so many folks work very hard and they never get any recognition for what they do. These people have businesses that employ folks. In our case, they pay taxes and those sort of things. And we need to recognize them for that, as well as they're an example to everybody else. I mean, you hear all this bad, negative stuff. Well, how about some great examples? Things that people can look at and say, I want to be like them. And I think that's just important.
So let me do a little admin if I could. If you're listening to the show, if you're watching this show, do me a favor, click that like button. obviously you're watching, so you like it, unless you hate watching me for some reason. So click the like button. Don't be silly. Click that button. It matters. It's how we get past the algorithms. It's how we make this thing grow. So please do that. Also, if you're watching this on Twitter, retweet this right now. Like this moment right now. Stop looking at my handsome mug and instead retweet this thing. It does matter. The more people who see it, the better off we're going to be. If you want to get your comment to the front, you can always super chat me if you're watching on YouTube. Again, these little things all matter. Do what you can. But more importantly, the mayor decided to show up, side of the road, help us out. So follow him. Give him some love. He's given us some love. Give him a little bit of love. Head over to jacobsformayor.com to see what he's doing. See if you want to get involved, particularly if you're in Tennessee. See if you want to get involved. By the way, he just won another election, so he's doing something right. So they reelected him. It wasn't just his stunning good looks. It was something else he was doing. So he actually.
If I'm relying on those, man, I got a lot of issues.
There we go. But please also follow him on Twitter, if you would, at Glenn Jacobs TN. Please do that if you can and give him a little bit of love. So if I could, I do want to go to one more piece. And that is the idea of you not being a tough guy. You said that you're not a tough guy once. And I think people would say, no, this guy's a tough guy. But why did you say that?
The head of Knox County's Senior and Veteran Services is a Vietnam veteran, and he was a lieutenant, I believe, in the Army. He might have been a captain, actually, but anyway, he was a squad commander. And on patrol one day, he was shot with an AK-47 and brought in a helicopter to take him out, and he was shot again while he was being airlifted out. Wow. And he almost lost his life, obviously, had a long rehab, came back, is just the most gracious, unassuming person that you would ever meet. Does his job very well, and for him, it's all about the people that he serves. I'm not a tough guy, man. I was a fighter, pretended to be a fighter on TV, and I've seen so many people like that whose names you'll never know because you just don't, but who are infinitely tougher and have been through a lot more than I will ever go through. Those are the real tough guys and gals.
Got it. No, I get it. It's funny you say that. When I was in the Marine Corps in the 80s, almost all of my senior leadership were Vietnam veterans. Almost all of them were Vietnam veterans. I'm not. I was in the 80s, so it's too late. But I mean, most of my leadership were actually veterans. So let me grab a couple of comments if I could. Sam says, "Wish Glenn was my mayor." Sam, me too.
Thanks, Sam.
Me too. And I just come off de Blasio. So, oh my God.
Yeah. And let me say this, actually, Larry. Again, I just live in a great area, and people here are like-minded with me. Are like-minded as I am, right? And that's important. I always tell people, and it's true, there are a lot of places around the country I couldn't be mayor. I just wouldn't want to be, because I'd be fighting battles that I don't want to fight. But here in our area, people think like I do, and that means a lot. And it allows me to do my job.
I actually considered moving to Tennessee. I was looking at the time, Chattanooga is what I was looking at. It's a little bit further south than you. So
it is about 2 hours south of us.
Yes. So, but I was actually considering that. So yes. Thomas says this guy gets it. I would agree. So you have some fans here.
Thank you.
Have a couple of fans here. That's good. So I brought those two up because I'm sure you get fans, but I'm sure you always get detractors also.
Yes.
I'm sure you get people upset at you, mad at you. Of course. Does it get to you to where you decide that you have to just say nothing? Or do you think that sometimes you have to kind of strike back? Obviously not physically.
Sure. Sure. So that's a great question, because for a lot of folks, they want the attention and they just say things, especially on social media and the trolls. So those folks, you just ignore them because nothing productive comes out of that. For other folks that have policy issues, you just argue your points. But you also have to understand, and this is something that my wife has a lot of problems with, because of course she loves me and thinks a lot of me. And when people criticize me, she takes it personally. And I always tell her, they're reacting. It's just like wrestling almost. They're reacting to a persona. They have never talked to me. They don't know me. They don't know why I do what I do. They don't know in many cases, the philosophy that I'm following, and you have to take that into account. So I try to show people as much grace as I possibly can. Doesn't mean that there aren't times that I get really frustrated and a little bit upset, because again, you have people in there and they're just being unfair to be unfair. But it's also politics, and that's kind of the business that we're in. And it's just not a world anymore for the meek and the weak of heart. It's very sad. When I came into office 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago, I guess at this point, excuse me, it's gotten even nastier than it was back then.
Yes.
It's pretty nasty, but now it's just over the top. And of course, social media plays a lot into that, and, tribalism, all those sort of things.
Yes.
In the end, Larry, the reason I do what I do is because I've had a great life, man. I grew up in rural Missouri. My mom and dad didn't have any money. Dad's retired military, and they didn't have any connections, anything like that. But I've been able to parlay the gifts that God gave me and just have a fantastic life. It's the American dream. And I want my grandkids to be able to experience that too. And that's why I do this. And I always keep that in mind.
You brought up a very big point that most people don't get. When people are attacking you or me or anyone who's puts themselves out in the public in any way, shape, or form, their family and friends see that and they get upset, right? I know the person's mad at you and they want to, I'm going to get Mayor Jacobs. I'm going to get him. Yeah, it's great. But you volunteered for this. You're ready to spar. But is your family ready to spar? Not really. Right. And people often don't get that they're actually often punishing somebody else when they're trying to punish you for whatever reason. They decided you're bad for whatever reason. So that is amazing.
And I really try not to engage in the ad hominem attacks and all those sort of things. I'd much rather talk about policy than I would personality. And I'd rather work constructively than I would tearing other people down.
And that's the thing, another reason why I wanted to bring this up, because so many people know that if I just yell Biden bad, Trump bad, I get clicks. Right? If I'm on the left, I yell Trump is bad. I'm on the right, I yell Biden's bad. And that's all I do. I have no other answer. I just yell that. Another reason why the evil one is bad. And I get clicks versus saying, okay, yeah, the other guy is bad, but here's an actual answer, right? I think you and I discussed this before. It is too often that in our current world, the Republican Party looks like it has no answers and the Democratic Party looks like it has only bad answers. And when people are in trouble, they take the bad answer.
Yep.
They say that's all I got. So they take it. In fact, Joel brings this point. He says, the government has answers. They're all bad answers.
And what happens too is Republicans end up boxing themselves in. And one of my definitions, we all have multiple definitions for things, right? But one of my definitions of a libertarian is someone who is a conservative, especially a fiscal conservative, all the time, not when it's just convenient. And that's what I see. Of course, now, thank goodness, with the Republican Party, we have people like Rand Paul and people like Thomas Massey and even people like Mike Lee that are that way. But too often when kind of the going gets tough and you need those answers, then it's just, there's a government program for that. That's always been my criticism of the Republican Party. But I really do think that, we're seeing a strong liberty-focused wing of the Republican Party emerge now, and it's sadly it's not. Sadly, I wish that same thing is happening with the Democrat Party, but it's just not.
There's actually a small, believe it or not, there is actually a Democratic. Is it Liberty Caucus or Freedom Caucus?
Something.
There is one, so there's a little bit in there. So maybe we can hope.
Right. It would make everyone's job a lot easier if there's actually just a few things that we could agree on and work from there.
Absolutely. Well, Mayor, I want to say thank you so much for giving me a chunk of your evening. Is there anything you want to bring up before we wrap this up?
No, I appreciate it. As we were talking about off air, thank you for your patience, because you've had me scheduled a number of times and unfortunately it's changed. So thank you for your patience, but really appreciate having me on, and best of luck with whatever you do in the future. And let's do this again sometime when I'm not sitting on the side of the road in a car. Okay.
I love that idea. Guys, if you like what's going on, then do me a favor, follow the mayor. He gave us some love. Give him some love. Head over there to jacobsformayor.com. See what he's doing. If you're in Tennessee, give him some love. Can you show up? Can you help him out? Can you get behind him? Somebody? Can you join his team? If you can do that, go ahead. or just follow him on Twitter, Glenn Jacobs TN. Guys, I will say thank you so much for this evening. I appreciate all the time you gave me. I will see you all very soon.